Jake had always been the kind of guy who liked to keep things simple at work. Show up, do your job, go home. No drama, no complications, no messy situations that could make life difficult. He'd seen too many good people get into trouble at the office because they couldn't keep their personal and professional lives separate. When he got promoted to team leader at the advertising company, Jake was excited but nervous. It was his first management role, and he wanted to do everything right. The company was growing fast, and everyone seemed friendly enough. But there was one person who made him a little uncomfortable from day one. Lisa worked in the finance department. She was smart, really good at her job, and everyone respected her work. But Jake noticed something different about the way she acted around male colleagues. She had this habit of standing just a little too close during conversations, laughing a bit too loud at jokes that weren't that funny, and finding reasons to touch people's arms or shoulders. When she talked out, Jake had heard some of the guys in the break room talking about her. Nothing mean or disrespectful, but they mentioned how she always seemed to be around, how she remembered everyone's coffee orders and birthdays, how she had this way of making people feel special. Some of them seemed to enjoy the attention, but Jake could tell others felt awkward about it. When his boss announced that Jake's team would be working closely with Lisa's department on a big project for their biggest client, Jake felt his stomach drop a little. He'd managed to avoid working directly with her for the past 6 months, but now there was no way around it. The first team meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Jake arrived early, set up his laptop, and arranged the chairs around the conference table. He wanted everything to look professional and organized. When Lisa walked in, she was carrying a stack of folders and wearing a bright smile. "Good morning, Jake. I'm so excited to work with you on this project," she said. Walking straight over to where he was standing, she set her folders down and gave him a quick hug before he could react. Jake stepped back politely but firmly. "Good morning, Lisa. I'm looking forward to a successful project too. Should we wait for the others before we start?" "Of course," she said, but instead of taking a seat across the table, she chose the chair right next to his. When the rest of the team arrived, Jake noticed a few exchanged glances, but no one said anything. During the meeting, Jake tried to keep everything focused on the work. They had a tight deadline, a demanding client, and a lot of moving parts to coordinate, but he found it hard to concentrate with Lisa sitting so close. Every time he pointed to something on his laptop screen, she leaned in until he could smell her perfume. When she laughed at his comments, she touched his arm. After the meeting, as everyone was packing up their things, Lisa lingered behind. "Jake, I think this is going to be a really fun project," she said. "Maybe we could grab lunch sometime this week to go over the budget details?" Jake kept his voice friendly but professional. "That's a good idea, but let's include Tom from accounting, too. I think it would be helpful to have his input on the financial projections." Lisa's smile flickered for just a moment. "Oh, sure. Of course. Team lunch. That makes sense." Over the next few weeks, the pattern continued. Lisa would find reasons to visit Jake's office, always with legitimate work questions, but the conversations would drift into personal territory. She'd ask about his weekend plans, his hobbies, whether he was seeing anyone. Jake learned to redirect these conversations quickly back to work topics. During one particularly awkward encounter, Lisa had come to his office to discuss some budget revisions. Jake was standing behind his desk, reviewing the numbers on his computer screen, when she walked around to his side of the desk to look at the screen too. "I think we can cut costs here," she said, pointing at the screen. She was standing so close that her shoulder was touching his arm. Jake immediately stepped to the side and moved back to the other side of his desk. "You're right about those cuts. Could you email me the revised numbers? I'd like to review them more carefully." "Sure," Lisa said. But her tone had changed. She seemed confused, maybe a little hurt. That evening, Jake decided he needed to have a clear conversation with her. He couldn't keep dancing around the issue. The project was too important, and the team dynamic was starting to feel strained. The next morning, he asked Lisa to meet him in the conference room. He made sure to leave the door open and scheduled the meeting for a time when other people would be around. Lisa, I wanted to talk to you about our working relationship. He began carefully. I think you're doing excellent work on this project, and I really appreciate your dedication. But I want to make sure we keep our interactions professional. Lisa looked genuinely surprised. Professional? What do you mean? I thought we were getting along well. We are getting along well, and that's great for the project. I just prefer to keep clear boundaries between work relationships and personal relationships. It helps me stay focused and fair with everyone on the team. I see, Lisa said slowly. I didn't realize I was being unprofessional. I'm just a friendly person. That's how I am with everyone. Jake could see that she was either genuinely confused or pretending to be. Either way, he needed to be clear without being harsh. I'm not saying you're being unprofessional, he said. I'm just letting you know that I prefer to keep things work-focused. I hope you understand. Lisa nodded, but something in her expression had shifted. Of course, Jake. Whatever makes you comfortable. As she left the conference room, Jake felt relieved but also a little worried. He'd handled it as diplomatically as he could, but something told him this conversation might have created more problems than it solved. After the conversation in the conference room, Jake thought things would get better. He was wrong. If anything, Lisa seemed to take his request for professional boundaries as some kind of challenge. The very next day, she showed up at his office with 2 cups of coffee. I brought you your favorite, she said with a bright smile. Setting 1 cup on his desk, I remembered you said you like it with extra cream. Jake looked up from his computer, confused. I don't think I ever mentioned how I like my coffee. Oh, you must have, Lisa said, settling into the chair across from his desk like she planned to stay for a while. I'm good at remembering these things about people I work with. The problem was, she was right about how he liked his coffee, somehow. She had been paying attention to details he didn't even remember sharing. It made him feel uncomfortable in a way he couldn't quite explain. Thanks for the coffee, Jake said, trying to keep his voice neutral. Was there something work-related you needed to discuss? Actually, yes, Lisa said, pulling out a folder. I've been thinking about the Johnson account, and I have some ideas for cutting costs without reducing quality for the next 20 minutes. They had a perfectly normal work conversation. Lisa's ideas were actually really good, and Jake found himself impressed by her creativity. Maybe he had been overthinking things. Maybe she really was just being friendly. But as they wrapped up the meeting, Lisa said something that made his stomach drop. You know, Jake, I really enjoy our one-on-one conversations. We work so well together. I feel like we really understand each other. The way she said it, with that particular tone and the way she was looking at him, made it clear she wasn't just talking about work. Jake felt that familiar, uncomfortable feeling creeping back. Over the next few weeks, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Lisa would find excuses to visit his office multiple times a day. She'd volunteered to stay late when he was working overtime, even though her part of the project was already finished. She started bringing him small gifts, a candy bar, because she thought he looked tired, a funny mug because she saw it and thought of him. The worst part was that she was smart about it. Everything she did could be explained away as normal colleague behavior. When other people were around, she acted completely professional. It was only when they were alone that she would make comments that felt too personal or stand closer than necessary. Jake tried different strategies to create distance. He started scheduling all their meetings in the conference room with the door open. He made sure other team members were included in their conversations whenever possible. He even tried working from home more often. But Lisa would send him long emails that went way beyond what was needed for work. One email particularly bothered him. She had sent it late on a Friday evening, supposedly about the project timeline. But it ended with, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Try not to work too hard. You deserve to have some fun too. I wish I knew what kind of things you enjoy doing in your free time. Jake stared at that email for a long time before deleting it without responding. He was starting to feel like he was being watched and studied. Lisa seemed to know things about his schedule, his preferences, even his moods that he didn't remember telling her. The situation came to a head during a team meeting 3 weeks later. They were discussing the final presentation for the Johnson account, and Jake was explaining the timeline to the group. As he stood at the whiteboard, drawing out the schedule, he noticed Lisa watching him intently. Not watching the board, watching him. When he turned to ask if anyone had questions, Lisa raised her hand. "Jake, I think your presentation style is really engaging. You have a natural talent for explaining complex ideas." The comment itself wasn't inappropriate, but the way she said it and the timing made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Jake could see his other team members exchanging glances. "Thank you," Jake said simply, then quickly moved on to the next topic. After the meeting, his colleague Mike pulled him aside in the hallway. "Hey, Jake, can I talk to you for a minute?" They walked to Mike's office, and Mike closed the door behind them. "Look, I don't want to get involved in anyone's business," Mike said, "but I think you should know that people are starting to notice what's going on with Lisa." Jake felt his face get hot. "What do you mean?" "Come on, man. She's always around your office. She volunteers for every project you're on. Yesterday, I saw her in the parking lot waiting by your car." "She was waiting by my car?" Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "Yeah, for like 15 minutes. When you came out, she acted like she had just happened to be walking by." Jake sat down heavily in Mike's extra chair. He hadn't even noticed Lisa in the parking lot the day before, which meant she had been watching him without his knowledge. "What should I do?" Jake asked. "I already talked to her about keeping things professional." Mike shrugged. "Maybe talk to HR. I mean, this is starting to feel like more than just someone being friendly." That evening, Jake sat in his apartment thinking about Mike's advice. He didn't want to get Lisa in trouble if he was misunderstanding the situation, but he also couldn't ignore the fact that his attempts to create boundaries had not only failed, but seemed to make things worse. He decided to start documenting everything: the visits to his office, the personal comments, the time she showed up in places where she didn't need to be. If things continued to escalate, he wanted to have a clear record of what had been happening. What Jake didn't know was that Lisa had been keeping her own records, and her version of events was very different from his. Jake started keeping a small notebook in his desk drawer. Every time Lisa came to his office, every unusual comment, every time she showed up somewhere unexpected, he wrote it all down with dates and times. At first, it felt silly, like he was being paranoid. But after just 1 week, he had filled 3 pages. Monday morning, Lisa knocked on his office door with a plate of homemade cookies. "I was baking this weekend and made way too many," she said, placing the plate on his desk. "I thought you might enjoy them." Jake looked at the cookies, chocolate chip, perfectly golden brown. They actually looked delicious, but something about the gesture made his skin crawl. Who bakes cookies for a work colleague they barely know? "That's very thoughtful, Lisa, but I'm trying to eat healthier these days," he said politely. Her face fell slightly. "Oh, okay. I just thought, well, maybe someone else in the office would like them." But she didn't take the cookies to anyone else. Jake saw the plate sitting in the break room later that day, untouched. It was like she had baked them specifically for him and didn't care if anyone else ate them. The Johnson project was entering its final phase, which meant longer hours and more pressure. Jake had been staying late most nights, trying to make sure everything was perfect for the big presentation. He thought he was alone in the building when he heard footsteps in the hallway. Outside his office, Lisa appeared in his doorway, holding a bag of takeout food. "I figured you'd be hungry," she said, walking into his office without being invited. "I got you that Thai food from the place down the street, extra spicy. Just how you like it." Jake's blood ran cold. He had never told Lisa he liked Thai food, and he had certainly never mentioned that he preferred it spicy. The only time he could remember eating Thai food recently was when he had ordered lunch delivery to the office about a month ago. Had she been watching what he ordered? "Lisa, how did you know I like Thai food?" he asked carefully. She paused for just a moment, then smiled. "Lucky guess, most people like Thai food, right?" But you said extra spicy. That's pretty specific for a lucky guess. Lisa's cheeks turned slightly pink. I think I overheard you talking to Mike about it once. You mentioned you like spicy food. Jake was pretty sure that conversation had never happened, but he didn't want to push it. I appreciate the gesture, but I actually brought a sandwich from home. Oh. Lisa looked genuinely disappointed. Well, maybe we could eat together anyway. It gets lonely working late by yourself. I'm actually almost finished for tonight, Jake said, even though he had at least 2 more hours of work ahead of him. I was just about to pack up. Lisa stood there for a moment, holding the bag of food, looking like she didn't know what to do next. Finally, she set it on his desk. Well, take it home then, in case you get hungry later. After she left, Jake sat staring at the bag of food. The smell was amazing, and he was actually starving, but he couldn't bring himself to eat it. Something about the whole situation felt wrong. How had she known he would be working late? How had she known his food preferences? And why did she always seem to show up at moments when he was alone? He threw the food away and decided to finish his work from home. The next day, Jake made a decision. He was going to talk to his boss, Mr. Rodriguez, about the situation. He didn't want to get Lisa in trouble, but he needed advice on how to handle things professionally. Mr. Rodriguez listened carefully as Jake explained what had been happening. When Jake finished, his boss was quiet for a long moment. Jake, I appreciate you coming to me with this, Mr. Rodriguez said finally. This is a delicate situation. Lisa is a valued employee, and we don't want to create problems if this is just a misunderstanding. I understand that, Jake said. I'm not trying to cause trouble for anyone. I just want to know how to handle this appropriately. Have you considered that maybe Lisa is just trying to be friendly? Some people are naturally more social than others. Jake had expected this response, but it still frustrated him. I thought about that too. But it's more than just being friendly. She seems to know things about me that I don't remember telling her. She shows up places where she doesn't need to be. Yesterday, she brought me dinner and knew exactly what kind of food I like and how I prefer it prepared. Mr. Rodriguez frowned. That does sound unusual. Let me think about this. In the meantime, keep documenting these incidents and try to make sure you're never alone with her. Always have witnesses around when you interact with her. I've been trying to do that, but she's very good at finding moments when no one else is around. As Jake left his boss's office, he felt both relieved and worried. Relieved that someone in authority now knew about the situation, but worried about what would happen next. He had a feeling that things were about to get more complicated, not less. That afternoon, Jake was working at his computer when Lisa appeared in his doorway again. But this time, something was different about her expression. She looked hurt, maybe even angry. Jake, can I talk to you for a minute? She asked, stepping into his office and closing the door behind her. Jake's heart started racing. Actually, Lisa, I prefer to keep the door open during work conversations. This isn't really about work, she said, ignoring his request and taking a seat across from his desk. I think we need to clear the air about something. Jake's hand moved toward his desk drawer where he kept his notebook, but he stopped himself. He didn't want to make Lisa more upset by taking notes while she was talking. Lisa, I really think we should keep the door open, he said again, trying to keep his voice calm. She ignored him completely. I know you've been avoiding me, she said, her voice shaking slightly, and I know you talked to Mr. Rodriguez about me today. Jake's stomach dropped. How could she possibly know about his conversation with his boss? That meeting had happened less than 2 hours ago. I don't know what you mean, Jake said carefully. Don't lie to me, Lisa said, and for the first time since he'd known her, her friendly mask completely fell away. Mr. Rodriguez asked me to come to his office. He wanted to know if I was having any problems working with you. He asked me very specific questions about our interactions. Jake realized that his boss had decided to investigate the situation immediately, which meant Lisa now knew that Jake had complained about her. This was exactly what he had been afraid would happen. Lisa, I think there's been some confusion. Jake started to say. Confusion? She stood up abruptly, her chair rolling backward. You think I'm confused. You think I don't know what's been happening between us. Nothing has been happening between us, Jake said firmly. We're colleagues working on a project together. Lisa stared at him for a long moment, and Jake could see tears forming in her eyes. But behind the tears, there was something else, something that looked almost dangerous. You led me on, she said quietly. All those conversations we had, all those times you smiled at me, all those moments when it was just the two of us. You made me think you cared about me. Jake felt like he was in some kind of nightmare. Lisa, I've never led you on. I've been professional with you from day one. I even had a conversation with you about keeping our relationship work-focused. That's not how I remember it, she said, sitting back down. Her voice had become eerily calm. The way I remember it. You were the one who started getting personal. You were the one who made me feel special. And then when I responded to your signals, you got scared and started pulling away. Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. It was like she was describing a completely different series of events, Lisa. That's not what happened. I have never given you any personal signals. I have never tried to make you feel special in a romantic way. So now you're saying I imagine everything. Lisa's voice was getting louder. You're saying I made it all up in my head? Jake could hear people walking in the hallway outside his office. He prayed someone would interrupt this conversation, but no one did. I'm saying we remember things differently, he said carefully, and I think maybe we should involve HR to help sort this out. The moment he mentioned HR, Lisa's expression changed completely. The tears disappeared, and her face became cold and calculating. You want to involve HR? She said slowly. Fine. Let's involve HR. But you should know that I've been keeping records too, Jake. Every time you complimented my work a little too enthusiastically, every time you kept me after meetings to discuss things privately, every time you looked at me in a way that made me uncomfortable, Jake felt the room spinning around him. What are you talking about? I never did any of those things. That's your word against mine, Lisa said, standing up again. And I think you'll find that my version of events is going to be very different from yours. She walked toward the door, then turned back to face him. You know what, Jake? I tried to be nice about this. I tried to handle it quietly between us. But if you want to make this official, then we'll make it official. Lisa, wait, Jake said. But she was already walking out of his office. Jake sat at his desk, his hands shaking. He pulled out his notebook and started writing down everything that had just happened, word for word as best as he could remember. But even as he wrote, he realized how weak his position was. It really was his word against hers, and she seemed to have her own version of events that painted him as the aggressor. An hour later, Jake's phone rang. It was Mr. Rodriguez. Jake, I need you to come to my office right away. Please bring any documentation you have about your interactions with Lisa. When Jake arrived at his boss's office, he found Mr. Rodriguez sitting behind his desk with a serious expression. There was also a woman Jake didn't recognize, someone from HR. He assumed, Jake, this is Carol from Human Resources, Mr. Rodriguez said. We need to discuss a complaint that was filed against you this afternoon. Jake's worst fears were coming true. A complaint? Carol opened a folder on her lap. Lisa has filed a formal complaint alleging inappropriate workplace behavior. She claims you've been making unwanted advances toward her and creating a hostile work environment. Jake felt like he couldn't breathe. That's not true. It's the complete opposite of what happened. We understand this is serious, Carol said. That's why we're conducting a thorough investigation. We'll need to hear your side of the story. And we'll be interviewing other employees who may have witnessed interactions between you and Lisa. Over the next hour, Jake told his story from the beginning. He showed them his notebook with all the dates and incidents he had recorded. He explained about the cookies, the Thai food, the personal comments, the way Lisa seemed to know things about him that he had never shared. When he finished, Mr. Rodriguez and Carol exchanged a look. Jake, we're going to place you on administrative leave while we complete our investigation, Carol said. This is standard procedure in these situations. It doesn't mean we've made any conclusions about the validity of either claim. Jake walked out of the building that day feeling like his entire career was crumbling around him, somehow. In trying to protect himself, he had become the one who needed protection.